Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for Assemblymember Seawright's virtual Town Hall Tuesday. We will begin in just a few moments. If you're watching live on Facebook, please feel free to write your questions for the speakers in the chat. Questions can also be sent to our office by email at seawright.r@nyassembly.gov. Our office has received questions for tonight in the past few days as well, and we will work to get all the questions answered. For any questions that we do not answer live tonight, our office will work to get you an answer as soon as possible. Again, thank you for joining us, and we'll begin in just a few moments.
Okay. Is we ready to go live? Good evening and welcome to all of you who are watching and listening to Town Hall Tuesday, a special community affairs program live streaming on Facebook. This is our 40th edition of Town Hall Tuesday that we launched in March a year ago when COVID first started. I'm Assemblymember Rebecca Seawright, serving the Upper East Side, Yorkville, and Roosevelt Island. We're hosting tonight and appreciate all of you joining in. We have a very informative program on the vaccine. Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo have been trying to fast track more vaccinations from the new administration. It's been announced that the federal government aims to administer up to 1.5 million shots per day. It is clear that we urgently need more supply and a larger network of local providers to relieve senior citizens and the disabled who are included in these early phases from the burden of traveling long distances and on mass transit to secure a vaccination. As of 1 p.m. on Monday, New York's healthcare distribution sites had administered 91% of the first dose of vaccinations. So far, 72% of New York State hospital workers received the COVID vaccine. Healthcare workers are strongly encouraged to get the vaccine, which helps ensure the integrity of the entire hospital system. Our office has been inundated with calls and emails from concerned constituents who have not been able to make an appointment for the COVID vaccination. Barriers to vaccination sites and limited supplies are pressing issues surrounding the vaccination access. We have joined forces with Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer on a COVID-19 vaccination task force to streamline the delivery of this life-saving vaccine in Manhattan. Additionally, we called on the mayor and the governor to establish a dedicated vaccination site for Roosevelt Island. We are pushing for the establishment of vaccination sites in Yorkville and on the Upper East Side at large venues, including Asphalt Green. New York's vast distribution network and large population of eligible individuals far exceeds the vaccine supply coming from the federal government. While the federal government has increased eligibility for the vaccine to include 7 million New Yorkers, the federal supply of vaccines has decreased. Due to limited supply, New Yorkers are encouraged to remain patient and are advised not to show up at vaccination sites without an appointment. Tonight, we will hear from experts in their respective fields on the COVID-19 vaccination rollout in New York. Dr. Daniel J. Baker, MBA, Medical Director at Lenox Hill Hospital and Director at Manhattan Eye and Ear Throat Hospital. Dr. Jeffrey Fisher, FACC, and Clinical Professor of Medicine at New York Presbyterian Hospital, Weill Medical College, Cornell University, and New York Hospital for Special Surgery. We will lead off with Dr. Baker. Dr. Baker, thank you for joining us this evening. As Medical Director at Lenox Hill Hospital and Manhattan Eye and Ear Throat Hospital, you oversee all medical affairs, quality, patient safety, and standards of care. And I know recently you met Congresswoman Maloney and I when we distributed face masks, and we appreciate your help in that distribution. Previously, you served as the hospital's Associate Medical Director and Vice Chair of Emergency Medicine, a role you assumed in 2013. You joined Lenox Hill in 2007 as an attending emergency medicine physician and have served in several other leadership roles of progressive responsibility. In 2016, you were elected as regional representative for Northwell Health Physician Partners Board of Governors and was appointed the physician lead liaison of Sunrise Emergency Care Development for Northwell Emergency Medicine Services. A board certified emergency physician, you've practiced in New York for more than 11 years. You hold a medical degree from Wayne State University. We're very pleased to have you join us this evening, Dr. Baker.
Well, thank you, Assemblymember Seabright. And thank you in addition for those masks. We are always very inspired and very grateful for the outpouring of support and gratitude from the community, particularly when it comes to the protection of our team members and our patients. I'm very happy to be here tonight. This is certainly an exciting occasion to have the vaccine finally with us. It's been a long month, almost a year now since our first patient showed up at Lenox Hill. That was March 7th, and a date that I think that many of us at the hospital won't forget. So to be talking now about the actual distribution of the vaccine is a very hopeful and inspiring moment. Although I know equally a very anxious, prone one by all, because we would really like for every single person who would like to be vaccinated as quickly as possible. So to talk just a little bit, we have been using both of the vaccines that have the emergency use authorization through the FDA, both the Pfizer vaccine as well as the Moderna vaccine. They are the same technology of vaccine, that is the mRNA. They've both gone through rigorous clinical trials to where we find them to be very safe and efficient. The efficacy studies on these clinical trials were really remarkable in terms of a 94.5 and a 95% efficiency in terms of protection available after the second dose for both of these vaccines. And the side effect profiles that we saw are very similar to what we've seen with similar vaccines in the past. We're finding on the first shot that it's predominantly a soreness at the site of injection. On the second shot, it can be something similar to a very, very mild, viral feelings of some tiredness, maybe a little bit of fever, the fatigue, as well as some muscle aches. And that seems to be very person to person dependent. We have some people who get the second dose and they just, on the next day as if nothing were different. And some people where they're just a little sluggish on the next day. But what I think is interesting is that everybody who experiences that is equally happy to experiencing that, knowing that they're still getting that immunity that is going to be conferred by the vaccine. We're excited to be part of the state and city's rollout of the vaccine very early on with phase 1A, which really went to healthcare providers. And we have been, again, advocating over and over and over again for this to quicken and for our capacity and our distribution to increase. We tried a lot of strategies to ensure the equity of delivery to our healthcare providers also, that it was first and foremost to the frontline individuals who were seeing COVID day in and day out. And not forgetting that that includes everybody from the doctors, the physicians, the environmental workers, the food and nutrition, everybody who's coming in and out of those rooms. It was a very important piece. And as we worked through that and were able to vaccinate a majority of our healthcare providers, I could not have been more ecstatic to when we opened up our first community vaccination center in our Einhorn auditorium. We were trying to be as aggressive as we could with that and really try to push our contacts within the state government as well as the city government to say, we're open, we're ready, we're willing. And if you just give us some vaccine, we will certainly make certain that the community gets it. That vaccine, you know, the way that the appointments go, I know is a bit of a sore issue in many ways, in that the technology that's being used is not necessarily allowing for everybody in an equal way to be able to get those appointments. It is somewhat cumbersome to go on the computer and to find the appointment in that manner. The information that you need to provide, again, you know, can be an overwhelming step just to get to that appointment. And we realize that, and we've been pushing the state with regard to that. We have been using the state system of the online appointment registration. And so we have been working again with them to say, we think there's some improvements that we could make, including that when you sign up for the first dose, that you would get an appointment for the second dose. That's our ultimate goal. And we're actually moving now away from the state's IT system to our own, so that we'll be able to do that. Because I know that there is a lot of concern amongst the people who have come through our community vaccination pod to begin with about when am I going to be assured that second dose, and how do I make certain I get that appointment. And I think we'll touch on a couple of those things in just a little bit. But that being said, we've been trying to do some reach out to groups of individuals that we know that will certainly qualify for the vaccine, and that would represent diverse groups, as well as groups that are more prone to COVID should they get the disease. We've been working very closely also with the Carter Burden Network, which is one of our city's largest senior centers, and they have a huge membership of seniors who would you know, immediately qualify based on the age component. And they have a network of getting information out to those individuals, and then trying to work on the technology side to be able to help them access the sites for appointments. So been in very close contact with that group in order to do that. But as with what you said, everybody is very excited for this vaccine. So when we put appointments up, they go within minutes. We put about 1,000 appointments up on one day, and 10 minutes later they were gone. I'm hoping that the future, with the change in administration in the federal government, as well as this push for an increased supply, will allow us to actually be able to have appointments, so that people are not spending so much time on the computer trying to get the appointments, but there will be a large availability, so that you can get it, feel relief that you have it, and know that it may be a few weeks from now, but at least that appointment is there. We actually structured our system a little bit uniquely, in that we did not want to release appointments unless we had the vaccine. So we had daily calls with our internal operations team at Lenox Hill, as well as with our emergency operations center at Northwell, and wanted to understand exactly how much vaccine do we have on site, and how much can we offer to the community, how much can we offer to our healthcare providers, so that when we were releasing appointments, we really only released them when we had the vaccine to do so. There's different ways of doing this, and unfortunately, some got bad press for having to cancel the vaccine appointments, and I think that there's good and bad on that. I think that there have been academic centers across the country who have scheduled appointments out for multiple months, and are just hoping that we get the vaccine in order to do that, but hoping that that really drives a little less anxiety on getting that appointment, that at least, you know, you're not spending again all the time on the computer trying to refresh and refresh and refresh and find that. So ultimately, I think one of the things that I hope and have been talking with the media a lot lately is that we're all in this collaboratively as a community and as a nation, to really make certain that we can get everybody vaccinated. And our goal really is the same, that everybody should get vaccinated who wants it, and to dispel any myths so that people will take the vaccine. And one of the things that equally I spend a lot of time trying to fight is that, you know, anybody who gets the vaccine is another step in the right direction. I'm sure there's a lot of people who have heard, well, I heard that so-and-so got it by going here and they didn't quite qualify, or I heard these different pieces. And again, I think when we think about it really from a more community perspective about fighting the transmission, everybody getting vaccinated is important as we move forward. So, but we are only in phase 1B in terms of our distribution. There's a lot of these numbers, there's a lot of these letters. It doesn't help with the confusion of things. And phase 1B really is about frontline individuals as well as individuals who are 65 and above. There was a quote by Governor Cuomo on a couple of town halls that he had a while back, where he mentioned about immunocompromised individuals and the ability for them to get the vaccine. But the state never really released guidance on that, and they never had an official platform as to what does that mean to say you're immunocompromised? How am I showing that I'm immunocompromised or otherwise having these different medical diseases that put me at risk? And so that, as of yet, for New York has not come to fruition. So we aren't yet seeing that. There are some states that have done some of that. New Jersey is one who's actually gone a little bit towards that route. And there are other states who are also behind us. If we look at Ohio, where my mother lives, they're still on 80 and above and healthcare workers, and that's it. So, you know, there's different states that are in different kind of levels of their ability to distribute the vaccine. But what I will promise everybody is that we are consistently pushing, again, all of our contacts, whether that is political contacts within the government sphere of the state and the city, whether that is our pharmacy contacts, whether that is our contacts anywhere, really, to just say we're ready to distribute more. And we have set up some further more mass distribution sites, one at Lenox Health Greenwich Village, which is our site in Greenwich Village on 12th Street, as well as the ability to have vaccine at Meath. And we've also been looking at how do we get to faith-based organizations and how do we get to other organizations to say and help them set up vaccination sites as well. So our biggest issue right now is the vaccine supply, as you mentioned. We don't have any vaccine right now to provide to the community. And we are waiting for that to come. There has been somewhat of a shift by the State Department of Health, where they are now saying that they would like healthcare institutions to be focused very much on healthcare workers and frontline workers, and that they will take care of the rest of the community. And that we will be looking to pharmacies and we will be looking to more of the mass vaccination centers in order to be able to provide for the rest of the community. So it's been an interesting shift, that one. And that's one I will be open that I'm not quite certain how that came about or quite why, but you know, that again, I respect the decisions made for where they are. There's a lot of moving parts. But for now, it looks like there's a little bit of a pause on our being able to continuously give out the vaccine within the community. We gave it out as fast and as furiously as we could. We ran out, and we were just ready and waiting for more at moment's notice.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Baker. And we do have some questions that have come in from constituents.
Sure.
Many seniors are having difficulty navigating the website to sign up for the vaccine. Would you recommend using the city telephone helpline to make a vaccine appointment, or should seniors use each individual's hospital's own online portal?
So I think that there's no one best system. I think the point is well taken. It is confusing, and I don't know that from a more global approach to things that we've created that very simple way of doing it as of yet. And I mean more the community of the state and even throughout the multiple states. So I would advise using the online portal. I think that's actually the most efficient, even though it's can be difficult depending on technical feasibility. The phones can work, but most often they go unanswered. That's equally frustrating. So I do think that once one gets the site up and kind of on the screen and ready to go, doing the refresh every so often. I don't advise sitting in front of it for hours on end, but looking for those appointments. I think that the online version is probably the better one. Different health
And does-
systems have put up their own. And I think that it's great to sign up. Usually you have to sign up for kind of their, what I'll call my chart access. So whether it's NYU's chart or New York Presbyterian Cornell chart, and there's some benefits of those in terms of being able to provide updates about vaccine availability. So those are also helpful.
And does Lenox Hill offer technical assistance for seniors?
So we've been trying that, and that's actually what we've been trying to work with Carter Burden Network and kind of say, how can we do this? And the unfortunate aspect is the speed at which the appointments go outstrips our technical assistance. So we've tried to do a couple things on the back end. We've tried to set up kind of getting some of the demographic information early so that we can input it. So again, we have a more longstanding relationship with the Carter Burden Network, which is why we worked with them. They're in the Upper East Side. They have a site on 72nd and 73rd and 2nd, and also on 109th and 1st. And they represent a very diverse population, and again, a population of our aging individuals, so that it's really the right population for now. So we've been trying to work with their leadership teams and say, okay, we know what demographic information we need when the site's going to go live. How can we get some people that are just going to kind of be at the ready to put that in for people who wouldn't otherwise do it? So we've done it a couple times and it's been successful. There's not enough yet kind of person power there to really be remarkably effective at it.
And Carter Burden is a true gem in the neighborhood. Also is on Roosevelt Island, which is in my legislative district, and we've been pleased to work with Bill Dion, their president, and also give them grant money. And so we'll continue to support Carter Burden. Will Lenox Hill be partnering with local drugstores or urgent care centers to administer the vaccine?
So we have been partnering with our own urgent care centers, which are Go Health Urgent Care. We have a partnership with Go Health. There's a site actually on the Upper West Side that went live early with vaccine distribution. And the goal really is to get to all the Go Health sites throughout the city. So we're partnering with Go Health rather than the other urgent cares. I think the other urgent cares such as City MD and whatnot are going to do their own kind of request for allocation in their own vaccine distribution. We haven't partnered yet officially with a CVS or Walgreens. We have been speaking with them, of course, again, because we're trying to, kind of help in any way, shape, or form that we can. But I think they're really gonna manage their own there.
Great. There's a lot of confusion around the eligibility of those with underlying conditions. Is the requirement currently 65 and older with underlying conditions, or just 65 and older, or anyone who has an underlying condition? If you could specify exactly which underlying conditions are eligible and just get some clarity around the eligibility requirement.
So right now, the eligibility is just 65 and older. There are some other eligibilities, again, about being frontline workers, teachers, healthcare providers. But if we take those out for the general population, it's 65 and above. There aren't any official state-made proclamations about underlying conditions. And so we have not instituted anything with regard to the underlying conditions as of yet. I am equally anxious for that to occur. It's certainly a vulnerable population that we would like to protect. It will take a little bit of work because it will be a definition as to what those are and how one is going to show being part of that group. But again, I always look for different states or different organizations doing the same type of thing. And so we know it can be done. And so we're going to continue to push until it is.
Okay, wonderful. A constituent has written in, I received my first dose of the vaccine at Lenox Hill Hospital. I've recently been informed by Lenox Hill that I'll have to travel to Long Island to receive the second dose. I'm a senior citizen. I do not drive. Are there any options to take the second dose at the same location as your first?
Sure. So I fully understand that. I do not drive also, and we would not want anybody to have to go to Long Island for their second dose. So we are currently correcting that. We have opened a call center specifically to correct for all of those appointments that were made. We are part of Northwell Health, which is a larger organization and has a geographic area that spans the tip of Long Island and then up into northern Westchester. And our call center, who started to make those second appointments, made them at sites that they knew had those appointments right away. And so those became not Lennox. So the answer is we're correcting for that. We have a second dose for every single person that came through Lenox Hill. We have it already on allocation, already in reserve. It is there. It will be there. And so perhaps Assemblymember Seawright, we can work together that if you find people who we haven't gotten in touch with yet or have appointments and they'd like to remake those, we can coordinate a way for us to reach out to them because we're going to do so.
Terrific, thank you. Next question. I've received my first shot at Lenox Hill with appointments being canceled due to the decreased supply of the vaccine. Will this affect my second dose appointment? In other words, could I lose my second dose appointment if the city is not able to receive more vaccines in a timely manner?
Yeah, no. That's our answer that we're sticking with, and we have a vaccine on reserve. The state did these in a little bit different. They gave us doses and they said, here's 1,000 doses, but these are first doses. And then they would give you 1,000 doses and say, these are second doses. So we didn't originally, when we got shipment of vaccine, we didn't say if of those 1,000, we'll put 500 and give to people and put 500 away. They told us they would supply us with the second doses. And so far they have been very thorough on that. In fact, we have a good amount of those doses ready for those second doses. And in fact, just received another shipment today of second doses of Moderna.
When the person received their first shot, they were not given a date in writing for their second shot. What is the follow-up and timeline for scheduling a second shot?
So for Pfizer, it is 21 days after the first shot. And there's a little wiggle room there where you can maybe be a day early. It's better to be a day late than early. So there is a little wiggle room there, but 21 days is the number to remember. With Moderna, it is 28 days later. So again, there's a little wiggle room and better to be late than early, but really 28 days from the first vaccination. So Pfizer 21 and Moderna 28.
Okay, thank you. And next question, I've tried to make an appointment with Lenox Hill over the phone and was put on a wait list. How does the process of follow-up work with a wait list and what is the usual turnaround?
So the wait list is a function that many institutions, including ours at Lenox Hill, used because we wanted to make certain that we never wasted a dose of vaccine. There was a lot of concern about dose wasting, and we echoed that. We would never want to waste a dose. We pushed the government and FDA very early when we knew that there were more than 5 doses in the bottle with Pfizer, but Pfizer was still saying there weren't. We pushed hard, we pushed for that to occur, and then that really changed. So in order to account for, in order to account for the fact that there may be people who signed up for the vaccine appointment, but then were unable to make it, or a no-show at some level like that, we took what we call the wait list. So individuals who showed up with no appointment, but said, here I am, I'm ready, I'm willing, we put their names on that list. That list doesn't really have a longevity, however. It is not something that goes on for weeks on end. It's really more of a day over day type of thing. There were many occasions when we did call individuals from that wait list, and we kept them for at least the next day. I would say that it's not something that should be relied on as a mechanism of getting the vaccine. So it still needs, you still need to get the, go for the appointment.
Okay, and do you envision that you will be making homebound appointments for seniors and others that can't travel to you to get the vaccine?
I envision that, absolutely. So I envision a couple different things. One, I envision being able to provide the doses to patients inside the hospital, which we're working again with the state to make happen. And I envision working with our partners in long-term acute care facilities and subacute rehab, as well as for home. We have a home hospital, home care arm of our organization that I'm very hopeful will eventually do that. I think it's going to be a little bit further down the line. I don't think it's going to be eminently coming, but I do think that is something that we absolutely need to kind of put a stake in the ground and say we're willing to do. If we're really going to get to everybody we need to get to, we need to be able to actually go to the home.
Great, terrific. And I know that we held 2 very successful flu shot clinics in our office this past
Yes.
fall, and we're looking at teaming up with Marymount Manhattan University here in the neighborhood for a vaccine clinic down the road. So, Dr. Baker, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure to hear you answer these questions and for you to share your expertise with us. We really appreciate you and all that you're doing at Lenox Hill. Our next speaker is Dr. Jeffrey Fisher, medical doctor. He's an author. He's authored a book on cardiology. He's an award-winning cardiologist internist who's been practicing on the Upper East Side for 40 years. He's a clinical professor of medicine at New York Presbyterian Hospital, Weill Cornell Medical Center. He recently had a letter to the editor published in the New York Times. And I've heard that he is a doctor's doctor, so he has a following among doctors. And I recently heard him speak and at the service of a physician who was highly thought of. And so, Dr. Fisher, we're very pleased to have you join us this evening.
Well, Assemblywoman, thanks so much. I don't know, how do I get to look at myself on the screen here? What do I have to hit? Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
All right. Well, that's good. I can't see me. Maybe that's better. Anyhow, thanks for having me. To the audience, I'm a cardiologist, but I'm also a GP. And the way I approach this epidemic is both as a cardiologist and as a GP. As a cardiologist, because somewhere between 25 and 50% of people who are going to be infected with COVID are going to have some sort of heart syndrome as a result, whether it affects the muscle or causes arrhythmia. In retrospect, I had a police officer who I saw a year ago who came in with shortness of breath, and I did an echocardiogram on him, and he was in heart failure. And I said to him, how much are you drinking? And he said, well, I'm not drinking that much, maybe 1 or 2 beers a day. And I said, well, maybe that's more than your heart can handle. Well, subsequently, we found out that he had COVID. He was one of the first people to have COVID, and he had COVID heart disease. And fortunately for him, over a period of weeks and months, his heart healed and went back to normal. So that's my perspective as a cardiologist. As a GP, my concern is always, what is the worst possible outcome? So that's how I approach this pandemic. What is the worst possible outcome? And that's why I wrote my first letter to the New York Times. And I'd like to read that. And then I'd like to read my follow-up letter, which I recently submitted. And then I think your audience can then ask questions, because I'm taking a different perspective on this pandemic. This was published on December 31st. To the editor, the discovery of a more infectious COVID-19 mutation in Britain is unfortunately not unexpected. Viruses mutate. Whether the current series of vaccines will be as effective in preventing infection by this new variant is unknown. The longevity of vaccine immunization protection is uncertain, and the need for booster shots is very possible. Add to that the large number of people who will decline vaccination. Bringing this pandemic under control will take more than vaccines and remdesivir and dexamethasone for hospitalized COVID-19 patients. Operation Warp Speed 2 should aim at developing an antiviral cocktail similar to those developed for HIV patients to give to all those who test positive for COVID-19. Only then will the pandemic be controlled. Now, that was 3 short weeks ago, less than a month ago. What has happened in the last month? Well, let me follow up with my second letter. To the editor, the January 21st, 2021 New England Journal of Medicine has 2 encouraging reports of successful use of antibodies in treating patients with COVID-19. For antibody treatment to be effective in helping to eradicate this pandemic, identification of individuals with COVID-19 positive nasal swabs needs to be readily available with fast turnaround times. Unfortunately, in the same issue of this journal, the lead editorial documents the deficiencies of the United States laboratories in providing appropriate testing. This bottleneck is particularly concerning given the reports that the COVID-19 variants may not only be more contagious, but more lethal and disconcertingly resistant to the Moderna vaccine. The federal government needs to provide more robust laboratory testing in tandem with increased vaccine production and efficient distribution, while Moderna and Pfizer create new vaccines. So my perspective is that while the current vaccination program needs to proceed, we need to also have in the works a treatment program and another program to generate more specific vaccines for the variants. I'm happy to take any questions from your audience.
Well, thank you, Dr. Fisher. And yes, and thank you for reading those 2 letters that were published by the New York Times. A question that's come in, how long does it take after the second dose to be fully immunized?
So the Moderna is 14 days. The Pfizer is, you get 89% protection at 15 to 21 days. I would conservatively tell your audience that 3 weeks after the second vaccination, you're probably fully immunized.
Many hospitals and city vaccination hubs have stopped accepting appointments due to the lack of vaccines at the moment. Would you recommend that seniors work with their primary care physician regarding setting up an appointment? I know that you shared that you had you were ready, willing, and able and to administer it to your patients, but the state had a requirement that you had to issue a certain number, a large volume of the shots a day. So would you recommend that senior citizens work with their primary care physician to set up an appointment?
Assemblywoman, this has been a tragic part of my practice because no physician wants to feel helpless. And I'm getting 5 to 10 or more phone calls by my patients every day, emails, texts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 90 years old. I have severe heart disease. I can't get a vaccine. And I'm helpless. I wish I could help them. but I have no way of helping them. I have a woman who's 103 who doesn't have a computer. Now, I just saw 2 patients today who live on Central Park South. Neither one of them drives. They're both nearly blind. They've been assigned to go to Lincoln Hospital in the South Bronx to get their vaccines.
Hmm.
The system is just awful. It is just awful. You know, it's
It
just
absolutely, yeah, it absolutely is. And that's why I commend, Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer for setting up this Manhattan Task Force. The meeting, first one was held today, because we have to do something. It's not working. And, I've seen firsthand as the constituents have been calling, writing, and coming into the community office here on 79th Street, their frustration at not being able to get an appointment.
I was very impressed, by the way, with Dr. Baker and the strategy that they're using at Lenox Hill. I applaud them for a very streamlined effect at administering the vaccine. But I'm fearful that this is going to be a practice run for other vaccines and other boosters in the next year or two.
Mhm. Next question, can someone test positive for the virus on a viral test after they've received their first dose?
Absolutely. You could be carrying the virus and go in and have a vaccine, and the latency period until you turn positive, the incubation period could be 7 to 14 days. So yes, the answer is yes.
Can the different mutations make the virus more or less contagious and viral?
Well, this is an interesting story here. And I don't have any firm evidence. I just have some suspicion about what I'm about to say. And I think when President Trump went out and said that the virus was going to go away when warm weather came, I don't think he pulled that out of the hat. I think he was told that because that's what happened to the prior coronavirus epidemics, SARS and MERS. They mutated down. The problem with COVID-19, in my opinion, again, call me paranoid, but I think this was a manufactured virus in the labs of China that was deliberately made to mutate up, that has become worse as time went on. And in fact, the South African mutation has been termed by their virologists as an escape mutation. That is, it's escaping vaccine protection. So you can get the vaccination and you can still get sick with the South African variant.
Interesting. We have constituents that are confused about Moderna and Pfizer mRNA vaccines. What's the difference in each? And in your opinion, which is the most effective for seniors?
I'm not a virologist. I'm not a basic scientist. So I'm speaking as a quasi layperson. I don't think there's much difference. They're both 94, 95% effective in protecting against COVID-19, the variant that we originally had here. The great concern is, will they protect against the variant? And Moderna recently released a statement that they're not sure that their vaccine is effective against the South African variant or the Brazil variant. Pfizer has, to my knowledge, has not commented as of yet.
Okay, thank you. Lisa Fernandez from the Carter Burden Network on Roosevelt Island has written in, should people continue to be tested while they wait for the second vaccination dose?
I don't think that's necessary unless they have symptoms. I think if you're asymptomatic, you just wait and get your dose. If they're concerned, if either they had contact with someone with COVID-19 or they're having symptoms, then at that point they should be tested just so they know if they're carrying the virus, and they can quarantine and not spread it. Remember, after the first dose, you're probably 50% immune, but that doesn't mean you didn't contract it before the first dose. You could be in the incubation period.
And this next question, since my COVID was diagnosed, it was based on symptoms and not a test. The constituent has asked, should I get an antibody test?
I would, sure. Why not?
And that involves a simple blood test, correct?
Correct.
Were you going to say something else?
No.
Next question. Is there any danger in taking the vaccine if you have strong allergies?
Well, it depends how strong the allergies are. The so there's two types of reactions to the vaccine. There's a local reaction, which is usually due to the vehicle, which is polyethyl glycol. So if you're allergic to vaccines in general, the vehicles, then you might have a local reaction. As far as a systemic reaction, I mean, you could get a mild flu-like syndrome from the COVID vaccine, similar to that people get with a flu vaccine. Sometimes people get a flu vaccine, and within a couple of days, they're mildly fluish. The concerns, the warnings are for people who have had a history of anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis is a very, very serious allergy where people go into shock. Those people are the ones who are identified in England as having reactions to the initial vaccination. So anyone with a history of anaphylaxis should speak to their physician before they get vaccinated for COVID-19.
We have another question that's come in on Zoom from a constituent, Deborah. Is there a reason to vaccine? Are there concerns for summer with SVT and AFIB?
I think which SVT is a supraventricular tachycardia. AF, I assume she means atrial fibrillation. I know of no data or any reports to suggest that vaccination causes cardiac problems.
And what are the main effects from COVID that you've seen as a cardiologist for people that have underlying heart conditions?
Fortunately, the only person I've seen in my office with the COVID heart disease is that police officer I mentioned early on. I did have one patient die early on a year ago. He was about 70 years of age, and he did have heart disease. He had hypertension, and he had coronary artery disease. But the problem, his risk factor was that he had psoriasis and was on an immune modulating agent. He was on an immunosuppressant. And when he got COVID, it just wiped out his immune system because he had no natural immunity at all. So he had an inexorable downhill course over the period of a month. It was very tragic.
In your expert opinion, when do you think that we'll start to see the light at the end of the tunnel?
Oh, I'm not sure you want to hear my answer to that. I think we have a lot of hills to climb. I think we've climbed one hill in that we've created a vaccine, and we have the blueprint ready to create more vaccines if necessary. So they're already identifying the proteins on the spike of the mutations that they could create antibodies against. So I think our scientists are in a very good place. Unfortunately, this pandemic has demonstrated that we as a country are not prepared to handle this pandemic. And, this was predicted by Bill Gates in 2015. He wrote an article in the New England Journal, and he absolutely predicted that this was going to happen. And no one took that warning seriously enough to create a federal structure that could call out the troops when this thing finally occurred, to have everything in place to manufacture, distribute, and administer vaccines in a timely fashion. If we had that, we would be in a much better position today. We still don't have it. It's a year later. The structure's still not there. It's mind-boggling that we're still working aimlessly and people in dire need of vaccination are not getting it. That this country is in such bad shape is beyond belief. I don't know how we got here. Who was minding the shop? And you have to look at all levels. I mean, the CDC, every federal agency was caught with their pants down. And people, over 400,000 people have died as a result of the fact that we did not have the appropriate strategy to handle a pandemic. And we still don't. What have we learned? After all those deaths, where's our progress?
Now, you're affiliated with New York Presbyterian Weill Cornell, where you're a professor. Have you heard when New York Presbyterian will have the vaccines to administer?
They have been administering vaccines to the staff, and patients, my patients who are patients at Cornell through the Cornell portal have been sent up to Presbyterian to the Armory to get their vaccines. So a large number of my patients have used the Cornell portal to get vaccination in the New York Presbyterian system.
And they have their second one scheduled?
Yes.
We have a question that's come in from a constituent. Can you take the vaccine if you're allergic to Remicade?
I would think so, but I would certainly suggest that they discuss that with their personal physician. Remicade is a very powerful medication. Off the top of my head, having done some reading on this, I don't think it's a contraindication. But again, the best person for that individual to speak to is the physician who's been ordering that Remicade for that patient, because that physician knows the patient well and knows all the nuances of that patient's health problems and whether the patient is best served to have the vaccine.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Fisher. We appreciate your sharing your expertise with us this evening.
Well, thank you for having me. And I appreciate being involved and listening to Dr. Baker.
Well, you were both terrific, and we appreciate also our viewers and listeners submitting questions. And so thank you very much, Dr. Fisher, for joining us. This morning, we voted to pass the COVID-19 Emergency Protect Our Small Business Act of 2021, which I was proud to co-sponsor, to put a moratorium on evictions for small businesses of fewer than 50 employees until May 1 of 2021, and create a standardized hardship declaration form to be used by tenants and landlords in order to take advantage of the protections. It would also put a stay on foreclosures for small businesses of 50 or fewer employees that have 10 or fewer properties that they are renting. Additionally, the legislation provides tax lien protections and negative credit report protections to small business property owners. Budget hearings started today. I was pleased to be appointed to the Ways and Means Committee by Speaker Hasty. Today we did transportation and heard from Patrick Foy and Sarah Feinberg, the president of the MTA, on their capital and budget needs. The Pandemic Recovery and Restart Program is a $130 million proposal. It helps small businesses that were most impacted by COVID-19 to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. The program would establish 3 new tax credits and expand a 4th credit to help small businesses, arts, and the theatrical industries, restaurants, and other businesses to bring back jobs and help the economy recover faster. The following resources are currently available to New Yorkers to schedule an appointment for a COVID vaccination. New York's new Am I Eligible app. New Yorkers can call 1-833-NYS-4-VAX or 1-833-697-4829, or search for a New York City site here at nyc.gov/vaccine finder. Our storefront community office on 79th Street and our dedicated staff have been responding to all of the hundreds of questions and concerns of constituents from walk-ins, emails, phone calls, and social media on issues regarding unemployment insurance, housing advice, access to food, and other critical resources at this time. We have a Tuesday housing legal clinic and a no-cost notary service here in our community office. If you're having trouble with your landlord or have housing questions, please call us at 212-288-4607 to register to speak with a free pro bono attorney about your housing issues. Please stop by on Thursday from 12 to 2 out on the sidewalk for our no-cost PPE, mask, and hand sanitizer giveaway. And please save the date for my virtual swearing-in ceremony on Tuesday, February 9th at 7 p.m. on Facebook Live, featuring the Roosevelt Island Girl Scouts and cabaret singer Marilyn May. We ask that you stay connected with our office. If you have issues, please contact us. We have a dedicated staff to deal with unemployment issues and housing concerns. Sign up for our email blasts. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at CWrite for New York, or again, call our office at 212-288-4607. And if you have issues, suggestions for legislation, we recently introduced a bill to strengthen our hate crime laws. Tomorrow, we will be hosting a press conference, which Channel 2 will be covering with a constituent on the Upper East Side who recently was the victim of an attack on his mother while they were in their car in Midtown. So we're introducing a piece of legislation after Kendra's law in Kansas. It's been replicated in 28 states, and we're sponsoring that legislation now in New York. So we ask you to tune in tomorrow morning at 9:30 on Channel 2. In the meantime, we ask that you stay safe, wash your hands, social distance, and remember to wear your mask. I want to thank again Dr. Jeffrey Fisher and Dr. Baker for speaking this evening, and for all of you for tuning in. And we look forward to seeing you again real soon. Thanks and have a good evening.